Emma's hands were always covered in a bit of engine grease, but that never bothered her. In her small town just outside Austin, Texas, people knew her as Joe's girl, the quiet young woman who'd grown up inside her late father's tiny garage. Joe had taught her everything about engines, gears, and fixing things that other people thought were hopeless. After he passed away, Emma kept his spirit alive, working part-time at the same rundown shop where her father's old tools still hung on the walls like relics. One humid Thursday afternoon, Emma was sent by her grumpy boss to drop off a rare ignition part at the luxury car showroom across the street. She stuffed the tiny box in her back pocket, wiped her hands with an oily rag, and crossed the street where polished glass and chrome gleamed in the sunlight. Inside the showroom, everything was spotless. Marble floors, men in sharp suits, and an impossibly sleek black Rolls-Royce Phantom that stole her breath for a second. Emma's boots squeaked as she stepped inside, earning a few curious glances from the sales team. They quickly turned back to a scene unfolding near the luxury car. Douglas White, the CEO who owned several dealerships in Texas, was yelling at his staff. The Rolls-Royce sat dead silent in the middle of the floor. And a small group of investors, all with shining watches and expensive ties, stood nearby, whispering among themselves. Douglas kicked the front tire in frustration. This was supposed to roll out for a big test drive today. Now it's dead, and none of you geniuses can tell me why, he barked, pointing at a trembling mechanic who only shrugged helplessly. Emma took a cautious step closer, curious despite herself. She knew that faint ticking sound under the hood. She'd heard it before when her father fixed classic Bentleys for wealthy collectors. She cleared her throat. "Excuse me, sir," she started. Douglas spun around, eyes narrowing at her stained overalls and messy ponytail. "Who are you? This is $1 million car, sweetheart." "Don't touch it," he snapped. Emma felt her cheeks burn, but held her ground. "Your battery sensor is loose, and the ignition relay isn't aligned right. I can fix it, if you let me," she said firmly, her voice steady, even as a few salesmen stifled laughs. Douglas laughed too, shaking his head. "Is this a joke? Get this delivery girl out of here," he said to one of his assistants. Emma didn't move. She looked him straight in the eye, unflinching. "You want it to run today? Let me try. 10 minutes, that's all I need." Silence fell. The investors, half curious and half amused, watched Douglas. The head mechanic shrugged in defeat. With no better option, Douglas threw up his hands. "Fine, if you ruin it, you pay for it." Emma didn't waste another word. She flipped open the hood with a confidence that made a few of the sales team exchange surprised looks. Her fingers moved fast and sure, guided by all the nights she'd spent fixing old engines beside her dad. She reconnected the sensor, tested the fuse, nudged the relay back into place. She felt the car's heartbeat under her fingertips, humming back to life like an old friend. She wiped sweat from her forehead, climbed into the driver's seat, and turned the key. The engine responded with a deep, flawless growl that echoed through the glass showroom. A few gasps rose from the staff, and the investors clapped quietly, eyes darting between Emma and Douglas. Emma stepped out, wiping her hands on her jeans, her heart pounding. Douglas stared at her, speechless for a moment. His eyes flicked to the investors, who suddenly looked far more interested in the young mechanic than in him. Emma felt a small smile tug at her lips. For the first time, she realized maybe she wasn't just Joe's daughter. Maybe she was about to remind everyone exactly who she was, and what her father had left behind for her to claim. Douglas didn't know what to say when Emma stepped back from the Rolls-Royce, her hands still smudged with grease, but her posture as calm as a seasoned engineer. For a second, the entire showroom seemed to breathe with her. The investors, the staff, even the skeptical salesman who'd laughed at her just minutes ago. When the engine purred steady and flawless, it wasn't just a car running. It was a statement she'd made without saying a word. Emma's eyes met Douglas's, and he forced an awkward laugh, trying to recover his authority. "Well, lucky guess, huh? You've got some nerve, girl. Where'd you learn to do that anyway?" His tone was dismissive, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of curiosity. She brushed her hands on her jeans, unbothered by the oil stains. My father owned this entire block once, Joe Miller. He taught me everything I know. He built engines people said were impossible to fix. He made sure I could do the same. The confidence in her voice surprised even her. A hush settled. Some older employees whispered Joe's name like it was a ghost from the past. Douglas's smirk faded. Before he could respond, one of the older investors stepped closer, eyeing Emma with new respect. He extended a hand. "You're Joe Miller's girl? I bought my first classic Bentley from him. Best man I ever trusted with an engine. You've got his talent, maybe more." Emma shook his hand, trying to hide how much her heart raced. "Thank you, sir. I just do what he taught me." Douglas tried to cut in. "Look, kid, I appreciate the help, but you really shouldn't be messing around with—" "Actually, Douglas," the investor cut him off sharply, "I think it's time you knew who really owns this place." He turned to Emma, pulling out a folded piece of paper from his inner jacket pocket. "Your father left behind some unfinished business. This showroom, the garage across the street, and the title that was never fully transferred after his death." Emma froze. She remembered how hard her dad had fought to keep his land when the city tried to buy him out. She'd been too young to understand all the legal battles. When he died, she'd assumed it was all lost to the bank and big men in suits like Douglas. She'd never checked twice. Douglas's jaw clenched. "This is ridiculous. That paperwork was settled years ago. She's just a mechanic." "She's the rightful heir," the investor said firmly. "I've been waiting for someone with Joe's grit to step forward. It's about time this place had a real owner again, not someone who just shows off cars they can't even fix." The entire showroom staff stood silent. Some of them looked at Emma with fresh eyes, already shifting loyalties in their minds. Emma's pulse thudded in her ears, but she didn't flinch. She stepped forward, feeling her father's spirit right behind her. "I'm not here to take revenge," she said quietly but firmly, "but I am here to run things my way, with real mechanics, honest deals, and no suits yelling at people who actually do the work." A small smile tugged at the corners of the older investor's mouth. He clapped her gently on the shoulder. "Welcome back, Emma." Douglas looked like he'd swallowed a rock. His polished shoes squeaked on the marble as he turned away, but the power he'd flaunted minutes ago had vanished. Emma walked over to the Rolls-Royce one last time, placing a palm on the warm hood. She could almost hear her dad laughing somewhere, proud as ever. She turned back to the showroom, her showroom now, and felt the weight of the future settle in her chest, heavy but right. She wasn't just the poor mechanic's daughter anymore. She was Joe Miller's legacy, and no one would ever dare doubt that again.